This is Marty, a first-time founder who cracked the fundraising game. He went from sleeping on the floor of his office to raising a $31 million Series B in just 7 days. His startup Pylon is now doing millions in revenue, backed by some of the world's best-known VCs like YC and A16Z. He's stealing customers from Intercom and Zendesk, companies 100 times his size. Today, I'll show you everything about the 3 big unlocks that took Marty from an unknown founder to one of the hottest CEOs in the Valley. The methodical process they use to interview over 500 customers and find a $1 billion market before writing a single line of code. The one thing you need to do before pitching VCs to raise big and fast. How they compete with companies 10 times their size and how you can do it too. I'm Pablo, founder turned VC and partner at Mistral, and this is the Product Market Fit Show. So Marty, before we jump into Pylon, can you take us back to the beginning? I know you spent like 2.5 years on some other failed startups. What was that like?
I was an engineer at AirBnB on the payments team, and I really wanted to start a company like the entire time I was there, the entire time I was in college, and I was like playing with ideas always, but never took the leap. So 2 years into AirBnB, I was like, screw it, it's time.
Were you scared to leave Airbnb and start Pylon?
One thing that helped me a lot was I just wrote down in a Google Doc. I was like, okay, worst case scenario is the opportunity cost of like not being at Airbnb for 2 more years and like getting that equity, getting that salary. I will potentially lose like 300, 400K. Which is like a lot. I was making more money out of school than either of my parents. You lose that money and you make no progress and you just like go back to being an engineer. I was like, okay, I like wrote that down. Like I can digest that. That seems fine. Then on the best case scenario, it was like, okay, I build a company, things go well. And obviously that's what I wanted. Is the worst case scenario that scary for me right now? Turns out it wasn't. Very easy to not spend a lot of money, especially if you're at this stage in life.
I remember when I started my own company, and when you get into that mindset of wanting to be frugal, you almost like start enjoying it because you're just on a mission to build something better, and that's all that matters to you.
Exactly. It worked out that myself and my 2 co-founders now, Robert and Advith, we all had that similar mindset where we want to do whatever it takes to win. And so, everything else is not important. So going back, like I've now worked 1.5 years on 2 different ideas. Neither of them worked. Both co-founders didn't work out. I had my buddy Advith, who was a former roommate of mine. I reached out to him. I was like, hey, are you interested in starting something? And turns out he was already exploring ideas with Robert, our 3rd co-founder. At the time when I approached them, I was like, hey, we should work together. They actually said that they thought 3 cooks in the kitchen was too many. And so they actually rejected me at first. And so I basically had to court them for like 3 months before they actually agreed to bring me in.
Dude, so I must admit, this is a first one for the Product Market Fit Show. We've seen people get rejected by VCs, by customers, but never by co-founders. So you finally team up with your 2 co-founders, and then you do something a little different because most founders, they'll go after like a pain point or maybe an idea they're really passionate about. What you did is you just try to find the biggest market. Why'd you do it that way?
I was like playing around with some like fintech idea. They were playing around with a logistics idea. So we had to like come together and be like, okay, which idea should we work? We were looking at all dimensions, and one specific thing we looked at was, okay, like what is the TAM of each idea? And so we like literally made a Google sheet. Like one tab was the fintech idea. We're like, okay, best case scenario, it looks like if we like knock this out of the park, we're going to make like tens of millions of dollars in revenue. The logistics idea, it's like, okay, if we knock this out of the park, it's going to be hundreds of millions in revenue. And then we're like, let's compare this to like a good company, like a company that we know is like really great. And so we looked at Rippling as an example. We're like, oh my God, like their TAM is like orders of magnitude bigger because they just take every person who works and like multiply it times $8 a month. And like, it's literally like tens of billions of dollars. And it's like, holy shit, like that's crazy. And so then we started exploring as well. Let's look at the public companies that exist that are SaaS companies. I actually don't know if you know this. Do you know how many public SaaS companies there are that are worth over $1 billion?
No, not off the top of my head.
When we had looked, it was like 76. It was very, very few. And when we looked at the companies that actually made it to that size, turns out all of them were like horizontal SaaS companies.
And by the way, just for anybody that doesn't know, a horizontal app is, for example, like Slack. It's a product that anybody can use regardless of what business you're in.
And the other thing we realized is like, no matter what industry you build in, you're always going to, or what market you're building in, you're always going to have competition. You're going to compete no matter what. And so you may as well be competing over the really, really big markets. The example, once again, let's look at Salesforce, who you just mentioned. How much of the CRM market does Salesforce own?
I don't know, maybe 20%? Not sure though, just kind of throwing out a number.
No. So that's very close. 24%, I think, last time I checked. So they are a $300 billion company like biggest SaaS company in the world, and they only own 24% of their market. Like that's mind blowing.
It's true. I mean, you can always pick apart these massive markets, and as long as you have a way in, whether it's on the go-to-market side or the product side, there's always an opportunity.
Right, exactly. First off, like our goal was to build a really big, fast-growing company, and so the really big part, it was important for us to then go after the really big horizontal categories because we thought that looks like based on like what has happened historically, like the companies that actually make it, it's really hard to get to $1 billion in revenue. Insanely hard. And we thought the fastest growing companies are the ones who solve like new problems on some sort of emerging trends. So like the great example of this is like crypto. If you build like a crypto wallet, crypto is small today, but like it could one day be all of money. You kind of capture the market early and then grow with it.
Okay, so you've got this massive horizontal market, but like how do you pick the actual problem that you want to solve?
We were looking for some sort of trend within a horizontal SaaS category. Now, the way we went about trying to find that trend was very methodical. We basically said, okay, if we're looking for trends, maybe there are like new job titles that didn't exist before that are starting to pop up that like could be an indicator of like new business workflows or like something new is happening because there's a new title and new person. We were looking at all of those different like new role types and we were messaging those people on LinkedIn, just asking for 15 minutes of time. Robert, Advith, and I, we'd wake up every day, we go on LinkedIn, we're messaging 120 personalized messages between the three of us every day, book probably like 15-minute calls for like each, day. We're just asking, what do you care about? What do you do? Like, what does your boss care about? What metrics are you measured on? What tools do you use? How do you operate? You basically just like follow your nose to try to find something. There's one idea where we asked a guy, we're like, you seem to be spending like 30 hours per month, like doing this like tedious thing. If we could solve this for you, how much would you pay? And he's like, I'd pay like $15 per month. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
And then you had this like breakthrough moment. Can you tell me a bit about finding that problem with Slack and then landing your first customer?
The insight didn't like hit us until we were actually talking to a buddy of ours who works at a Series B startup. And he told us, I'm like looking at tooling to help manage this Slack mess. He explicitly is on the phone with Advith and, tells him, hey, like, this might be worth exploring. Advith calls Robert and I, hey guys, like there might be something to the Slack thing. It's kind of interesting. It seems like if the world moves in this direction, a lot of workflows are going to break. And it's not only Slack, it's also Microsoft Teams, which is popping up. It's like Discord, it's WhatsApp, it's Telegram, like, all these places where you have to do customer communication. And for the first time ever, not just consumers are going omnichannel, but B2B is going omnichannel as well. I'm in this hacker house. I go upstairs. I'm like, yo, Tejas, the founder of High Touch, who I was living with at the time, like, hey, Tejas, do you guys have this problem? And so like probably 30 seconds. And then he's like, Marty, you're not going to believe it, but we not only have this problem, but we're actively looking for a solution. I had the idea probably on a Saturday. The next day we talk to YC. They tell us the idea sucks, but that like, and they also say that they've seen this idea a million times and it never works for anyone. But they're like, you guys seem really good. So, do you want to have an interview, like an actual YC interview, and you can have it in 2 days or in 2 weeks. And so we're like, okay, let's do it in 2 weeks so we can show a ton of progress before then. The next 2 weeks, we're like grinding, like trying to figure out, okay, like setting everything up. And then, yeah, it all kind of comes together. Teresa starts piloting like right before our YC interview. So we could go in and say, yeah, like we had this idea 2 weeks ago. It's like in a customer's hands right now. Like they're going to start paying for it like ASAP.
So you raised $3.2 million from General Catalyst in 6 days. That's wild. How'd you do that?
How the investor hears about you is one of the most important things, especially early stage. So what we did and the advice we got was have your founder friends go to the investors they know and say, hey, are you looking at Pylon yet? Like, I'm buddies with the founder. They're really good. If you're not talking to them already, like, let me know and like, I can like get you in. And so like, basically that was the message they were receiving instead of, hey, like Pylon wants to talk to you. So we just started pounding the investors we wanted to talk to. We're just like, every like 5 founders are telling them like, are you looking at Pylon? They're in the current YC batch. Like they're really good, blah, blah, blah. And then the other like common mistake I think people make is they will accept intros to investors from other investors. And I learned this from YC. That's like a big no-no. So for example, let's say I talk to an angel investor and they're like, this isn't my type of company, but like I can intro you to blah. That's super bad signal if they do that, because that fund will be like, hey, why aren't you investing? They better have a really good reason. I mean, we didn't time this perfectly, but we were trying to show like quick revenue increase right before those conversations. So the first like number investors were seeing was like, okay, in a couple months, we got to like 30K in like ARR. And then like literally a week later, it's at 60K. And now like 2 days later, it's at 80K. And again, we're back channeling this information to our founder friends to like, distribute to everyone. So they're like, oh shit, like they're growing. And so it's like, okay, got to close them fast.
Now let's talk about something else that's gotten a lot of attention. You guys chose to live in the office on a mattress on the floor. Why'd you do that?
I think it's funny. Most companies, I feel like, used to start this way. And for some reason, it's gone out of fashion, even though I feel like, if you're with people you really like and you're working on something that's really exciting, like why wouldn't you want to be in that place all the time? Impression counts on LinkedIn and how hard it is to get something to the high hundreds of thousands. That post got 1.2 million impressions. And it's because one, there were a lot of people who were like, oh my God, this is so novel, even though in startup land it shouldn't be. And also a lot of people hated it. So like the best posts, obviously, there's some sort of like, okay, people love it or they really don't like it. And so if you go through the comments of that post, there are a bunch of people who are like, this, prevents a lot of people from working at Pylon or is like not a safe environment. But I think that if you actually knew the situation, if you knew the people, if you knew us, that's obviously not how it is. It's actually just a really fun environment where you're just trying to build the future with your friends. So we had lived in our office, to start when we were starting the company and we were like pivoting through ideas. So we were essentially in an apartment. Then we upgraded after we raised our seed round into kind of like a bigger loft. And we actually scaled in that loft to up to 10 people. And it got so packed that Robert, literally one of my co-founders, had a mattress on the floor in like the living room area. So it was just like on the ground. And we had this Papa-Shot and his closet was like underneath the Papa-Shot. And that photo I think is going to be iconic if, Pylon makes it as a big company, because we'll show obviously those early days. And we actually included that photo in our deck when we actually went out to pitch our A. And so that was the second slide. First slide was our logo. Second slide was Robert looking up from his mattress with like the Pylon, living room essentially in the background, and investors loved it.
And the other thing is you have this really like unique culture, 0 scheduled meetings, no titles, no levels. It sounds cool, but I mean, how do you actually make that work?
There are only 2 scheduled meetings on anyone's calendar. One of them is design reviews. Otherwise, we have 0 one-on-ones with anyone. A lot of the communication is done through, I send out our monthly investor update to the entire team. So everyone sees cash in bank, everyone sees growth rate, everyone sees, like what's going well, what isn't, customer feedback, etc. The time that people are here, there's no meetings. If you need something, you just like turn to the person and like go ask them for help or try to solve the problem. And also we don't have a concept yet of levels. The moment someone comes in and they're like, oh, like how do I get promoted to the next level? Suddenly like the whole company has to change. And then I think that's where we'll have to start doing one-on-ones and stuff like that. I don't know at what stage that will change, but we want to prevent it as much as possible, because right now everyone actually just, works on the projects that are most important. They like get shit done. They ask the right people who are right next to them for help. I think that's how we execute really, really fast. You're either a founder or you are a non-founder. So that's what the leveling looks like.
And so like, how long did it take you to realize that you had to pivot?
So we spent, believe it or not, and it's like almost like embarrassing to say, we spent a whole year working on the Slack app. Like literally. So we've been around for 2 years. Half of that time was working on our like Zendesk, Intercom, like Slack integration. I mean, we're charging like 10K for the app. Like, it's like we're making revenue. In fact, by the end of our YC batch, we were at 120K in ARR. People were buying Zendesk or buying Intercom, and it wasn't working because they did all their support in Slack. And so they literally were in some cases paying more for our integration than they were paying for Zendesk. They start to tell us things like, yeah, actually like Intercom has this problem or Zendesk has this problem. And these are things that like we know they're never going to solve. I've had 5 CSMs with Zendesk in the past year. I can't get in touch with them. And at the same time, our smaller customers or smaller prospects are coming to us and they don't resonate with buying a Zendesk at all. And we were pushing them away. We're like, just buy Zendesk and then buy Pylon. Like that's all you need. And they're like, we don't want to buy Zendesk. Like it doesn't feel like a product that like we want to use. It doesn't feel like it's built for us. And like, why do I have to buy 2 tools just to do the one thing I want? The assumption, the hypothesis we had originally made, which was that Zendesk and the support platforms would be impossible to rip out, actually like starts to crumble in our heads, because we're seeing like the small companies don't want to use it. And the bigger companies, like there are a lot of gaps and like cracks in the product that are not suitable for our segment, which we were selling to, which are these B2B tech companies. We make this bet. We're like, okay, like I think there's a path in competing with Zendesk to be kind of like a modern ticketing system. And we're going to serve these like B2B omni-channel companies who talk to their customers, not only over email, but also shared Slack channels or Microsoft Teams and like these new age channels. And that's like the majority of these tech companies that we're seeing in like YC and, kind of around SF.
The other story I really want to hear about is actually the reason I found you. You raised $17 million from A16Z in just 14 days. How'd you do that?
We were already cash flow positive. We did not need the money. We weren't thinking about raising money. At this point, we had raised like 3.3 total, and we had like 3.1 in the bank. And one of the angels who works at a fund was really bullish on us, and they come to our office and, kind of say, hey, like, I know you're probably not thinking about raising right now, but, we should start a conversation. What would it take to get involved? We basically asked ourselves, are we going to get a better offer than what we could get right now if we wait like 3 months or 4 months? The answer was no, because realistically, we could probably just get a good offer right now. And then two, there's also risk that something else happens in between that time where suddenly we're not as appealing for some reason. I won't name the fund names, but I was talking to a tier 1 fund, trying to rush them to like move faster in the process, because we now had offers from Andreessen and a couple other people. And so, to get competitive, we get as many people into the deal as possible. I tell them, I don't know how else to tell you this, but I'm talking to Ben Horowitz tomorrow. And like, if you want to be involved and we want to be able to talk about this, like, we need to move faster. We were playing that game as best as we could. And so there, 14 days after the start, we end up getting the term sheet, closing the round, and that was $17 million. So now, with our basically $3 million that we have left from everything else, we have $20 million in the bank and still don't know how to use it.